couple of weeks ago I showed you guys how to make the Orion class wand, which looks like this. On this episode, I'm going to show you guys how to make the other 4 classes available at Simian and Moon. Let's begin. The easiest wand to make also has the most potential for creativity. The Virgo class is just a simple handle with a guard and pommel, like the Orion, but with a smooth surface, which is basically a blank slate for all sorts of fun designs. So I've made a whole bunch of basic shafts. This one already has a spiral point and all of the overlaps masked by clay, as I showed you in a previous video. For the Virgo class, all we really need to do is cover a part of the bottom with clay, like a handle. But of course you can't just roll out a large blob and just wrap it around. The clay may refuse to stick, and as you press harder, it will roll out and get wider. So as a workaround, here's what you do. Roll out a long string of clay, not too thin, maybe a centimeter thick. With wet fingers, flatten out the roll like this. Now, after gently peeling it off the board, spiral it around the shaft, leaving no gaps. Now, with wet fingers again, smooth out the clay so that the joins are practically invisible. Let the clay dry out for a little bit, maybe for an hour or so. Then with a pen or pencil or whatever, draw a pattern that you want to put on. This one I'm making a flowery, cute, Japanesey type design. I don't think I actually end up with that. You don't have to follow this plan exactly as you're going through, but it kind of helps as a visual aid. Now, back with some clay, trace the pattern you just put on. This is where you go nuts with all your kindergarten Play-Doh skills. Finally, just like the Orion, wrap rings of clay around the top of the handle and at the bottom. Here I'm using a tool to make sure there's a sort of cleaner edge to it. Finish it off by rolling a ball and flattening it on the pommel. Like I said, the Virgo class has a heck of a lot of room for creativity. You can do something like this, or this, or this, or maybe even just this. Next on the list is the Eridanus class. It's super simple. Start with a roll of clay about 1.5 centimeters thick. It needs to be fairly long because of what I'll be doing next, which is to spiral that piece around the shaft, leaving a huge gap in between. Then I trim off at the end with just a little bit of clay hanging off. Now, with another long roll, I do the same thing again, right in between the gaps of the first spiral, so there's all this room in between. Then, press in and taper it to blend it with the shaft. At the top of the double spiral, the end should be pointy. At the bottom, shape it into a single point. Okay, so it seems easy, but it's a lot more complicated when you're actually doing it. Next is the Ophiuchus, my personal favorite. Same as the Eridanus, start with a long roll, this time a bit thicker. Ophiuchus is the constellation of the snake holder, and thus the main feature of this wand is the snake. Let's start on that by making a snake's head. Just cut open a mouth. If you cut unevenly like I did here, the smaller side should be the jaw part. And add an eye hole. Then you spiral the snake down, leaving a gap in between about as thick as the roll itself. It might make sense in your design not to blend the snake in with the shaft, but obviously it will stick better if you do. Now shape the end into a stylish point, and maybe add a pattern to the snake's body. I'm not doing that right now. And add a forked tongue, and you're ready to paint. Just before the varnishing stage, I like to use a jewel sticker thingy in the eye to make it extra creepy. Finally, the most ridiculously hard design to pull off is the Phoenix. You have no idea how many times I had to start again on this wand. You pretty much just have to get it right the first time. Okay, so starting with a long roll, maybe a centimeter thick, flatten it out. But here's the catch. Make sure that the start stays thicker than the end, by gradually pressing harder as you go along. You'll notice I also flatten it out fairly wide. Now make a spiral down the shaft to make the handle, purposely overlapping so you get this kind of effect. Now, to make the wing, start with 3 or 4 tubes, perhaps 1/4 centimeter thick. Have them gradually get smaller, starting with one about 3 centimeters long. Now, first with the smallest one, attach it to the start of the spiral and then stick it to the shaft with a curve. Make a flattened point at the beginning and then blend it in at the join. With the next largest, do the same thing, partially on top of the first, and so forth, making sure that they fan out from each other dramatically. So there you have it, 4 different designs of wands: Virgo, Eridanus, Ophiuchus, and Phoenix. Thanks for watching, Davey on Air.